Hello, this is forecaster Dante Brown Royal from the Weather Advanced Storm Prediction Center. I'm bringing you something this afternoon and evening, another episode in our series of our Path to Winter. I promise you that we will be coming on strong with this episode in this series. So this is our Path to Winter series for 2019 and 2020. To find our official hashtag for that is Path to Winter 2019, and that's where you can find anything that we're posting for winter 2019. This is on Instagram and it's on Twitter. So if you have anything that you want to share with us as we head off, or you want us to look into, use hashtag winter path to winter 2019. It's all one word, and that's where you can contact us, or in the comments section down below in here. But it's great to be back. This is part 2 of this first episode. This is a series where we're headed towards there's going to be a set of 3 winter forecasts. There's going to be a preliminary in early June, midterm in like August, September, and then in October, November, we're going to have our final winter outlook for 2019-2020. So, but for right now, all of these path to winters, this is where we're going to lead up to where you can see where we're heading or leaning towards in that direct area. So this week we're going to talk about reviewing winter 2018-2019. I know y'all like the last video was like that. Well, this video is talking about the precipitation, because this is once again a winter, an El-Nino that didn't act like a typical El-Nino, so we have to figure out why to make ourselves better for the following year. So with that said, without further ado, December of 2018, the precip review. In December of 2018, the statewide precipitation ranks for the entire southern half of the nation, that kind of looked like a typical El Nino. Things seemed to be going the right direction precipitation wise. Georgia actually had one of the most record wettest months. One of the things that you'll be surprised to see is that Tennessee ended up having one of the record wettest winters, because meteorological winter starts in December, ends in March. Ends in March, so March is considered meteorological spring. Just a little tidbit there. It was drier than average to average in the west. That's kind of what you see. Typically in what we call Tornado Alley, that was wetter than average as well as we headed into the winter. As we headed into January, it kind of dried out a bit during the end of in the southeast, and that kind of was a little different. It was wetter in the northeast, and typically we have one of these storm tracks that you'll have dip in the jet stream about here and then coming up the coast. So typically it's wetter than average down here and along the east coast. So this is not too much of a big surprise up here in the northeast. It should be wetter than average during the typical El-Nino. It was much above average in most of the northern in most of New England. It was drier than average in the mid-Atlantic. DC, Maryland, Virginia was drier than average. West Virginia drier than you typically would have. We had one good storm that came through snow-wise, precipitation-wise, and it really developed in Texas and followed through Oklahoma, and it was a big and nasty looking storm as it headed, but then it dried up as it started to transfer that energy to the coast. So if you weren't anywhere above Washington, this little area right in here that's glowing in yellow that I'm circling around, you really didn't have that much snow. You really didn't have that much snow in January. We had about a foot here in Washington because it transferred the storm off the coast and then it zip right on out. But it was drier than average in the Pacific Northwest as well. We're going to really focus on the mid-Atlantic, Northeast, and Southeast, because that's where we specialize here in Weather Advance. Without further ado, we'll review February. February, the western half of the nation was wetter than average, the Midwest was wetter than average, and the Mid-Atlantic was wetter than average. The New England was a little bit drier than average, and it was really that wet in Tennessee that if you average out the entire winter, this was one of the wettest winters, and you'll see that as we head into the overall winter preview. Drier than average conditions in the areas of Texas and the southern plains, that's what I call them. Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida all had drier than average conditions as well. And average, once again, average conditions, you can kind of tell almost where the storm track was. It was just a zonal flow type of a thing where you just kept getting, if you were getting rain, that you were getting snow, that's who kept getting snow and rain. And that was all, and that was in February. You had one decent snowstorm in March, and that's what we're going to go over real quick. We had one decent snowstorm that was in the month of March. And that came up right on. It took a beautiful track. I mean, it was a beautiful track as it headed up into the northeast. But it was so. There was no cold air, as you saw in our prior video. If you haven't seen it, go back and look at it. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about. There was no cold air what to speak of. So if you were in the DC metro area, you didn't get perfect track or not. We didn't get much of any snow. We got a lot of cold rain at around 33, 34 degrees. That's what happens when you don't have a cold dome, a high pressure up here in northern Canada. Most of the winter we had that cold dome. That we did have a cold dome. It just squashed everything down to the south, and it dissipated and never really did anything with it. It was much drier than average in the southeast for the most part, and that once again, as you'll see in our last slide here, that's not typical for an El Nino to have a much drier than average month. Of course, this is meteorological spring, and that's what we're touching on. The Pacific Northwest was drier than average, and the Pacific Southwest was wetter than average. That typically doesn't happen. So we're going to look real quickly at our final graphic. For the winter, when you sum up the whole winter, this is what I meant when I said Tennessee had one of the wettest winters, that one of those months was just so wet that it ended up being still one of the wettest winters on record. Then you think about the rest of the eastern half. So half was really much above average to much above average on the eastern half of the nation. It was wetter than average. Average around the Pacific Northwest. But most of the eastern half of the nation, which is typically almost what you see during an El Nino, it was wetter than average. But a lot of that happened in the December, January portion. February, March was not too wet for the most of the eastern half. It was mostly up in here in this zonal flow. There were some characteristics of an El Nino, but it didn't necessarily fit the mold of most El Ninos, as pertains to producing snow for snow lovers. Now, an average El Nino winter is, you'll see this, and this comes from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. An average El Nino winter low pressure system really forces the warm air up into southern areas of Alaska, into Canada, the Pacific Northwest, and it's wetter than average, cooler and wetter than average in the southeast. And once again, you saw it was not tremendously wet down there like you typically would see because of that amplified Pacific jet. It was wetter than average, but it was almost like the Pacific jet was farther north and the polar jet was farther to the west, almost like you would see during a La Nina almost, except for the Pacific jet, Pacific or tropical jet stream staying farther to the south and being a lot weaker. So there were some things we saw that were from December looked like an El Nino. January kind of looked like a mix of an El Nino, La Nina. February was meh. And especially if you look at the temperature profiles, it was colder than average for much of the west. Colder than average. Look at our last video. I'll keep bringing that up because in order for you to understand where we're going, you have to watch all the videos. So we're going to finish. We're going to end it here. We're going to come out our next one. We're going to look at the ESNSO or the ESNO, and I always have a problem with that. But anyway, we're going to look at that. And we're going to see exactly what the computer models are saying as it pertains to the weather for the next couple months. I mean, not I'm sorry, as it pertains to what the computer models are saying, as it pertains to the El Nino, La Nina stage, or neutral stage. And then the following episode, we're going to explain what those mean. And exactly which one would work best if you're a snow lover, and if you're a snow hater, which one you're looking for. All right. So thank everybody. Enjoy the weather because it's the only weather you got. Tune in for other videos. We have planting videos that are out now. We have Minecraft videos, and there's some projects that we're working on. Other than that, some educational videos are coming soon that we've been working on. So there's a lot of content coming. Just stay tuned. All right. This is forecaster Don David Brown Royal from the Weather Van Storm Prediction Center, and everybody have a wonderful day.